Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And I want to welcome you officially to the 5th Virtual Energy Professionals Roundtable, brought to you by World Energy Day. It's an amazing day. It's the last Friday of the month, and I'm so excited that you took time to join us today. So kindly let us know in the chat where you're joining us from before we proceed. Please let us know where you're joining us from. Are you here individually or with an organization? Kindly write us on the chat, let us know. Liz, Nairobi, Karibu. Let us know on the chat where you're joining us from. As we wait for you to text us on the chat, my name is Linda Manyala. I'm part of the World Energy Day Secretariat, joining you from Nairobi, Kenya. And before we begin this session, I would just like to give us a few housekeeping rules. Just to let you know that this session will be recorded and our team will be able to share a link via our WhatsApp webcast broadcast, where you can be able to access the recording and other useful resources during the webinar. We also ask that you mute your microphone just to maintain order, and we'll be able to call upon you in case you need to speak. Also, feel free to insert your names in the profile so we can be able to address you accordingly and also acknowledge you properly. And in case you have any questions, we do have a session on the question and answers session that will be able to answer all your questions at the end of this session. Thank you so much for joining us again. So I will just unpack a few things before we get onto the program. For those joining us for the first time, this roundtable is a part of other series of conversations that are leading up to the World Energy Day conference, which is held in October every year. And this year we'll be going to Uganda, Kampala, Uganda. So we're very excited about that. And we hope that we'll be able to see you there. If you won't join us physically, we will have a hybrid event. So virtually you'll be able to tune in and you'll be able to also join us during this session in October. Our previous roundtable was held in July, and we were able to discuss on energy policies and regulations in East Africa. And today's topic is a hot topic. It's a much requested topic. You have been requesting us to talk about financing energy efficiency projects. And today's topic is on that. We are going to be talking about financing energy projects via ESCOs. So we'll be able to address opportunities and barriers in developing and implementing scalable financial mechanisms for the energy efficiency transformation in Africa. So please stay tuned. Kindly write on the chat any questions that you may have, and I'll be able to take them at the end of this session. I see Kefa and Subuga from Uganda. Welcome. I see Karen Machakos. I see Manyala Jabez from Nairobi. I see Jesse Nyokabi from Athi River. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have you here today. So as I said, World Energy Day is brought to you by the World Energy Day Foundation. And we have several activities that lead up towards this conference. Part of the activities are the Youth Innovation Challenge, and we are able to get the youth to submit projects, and they're able to compete. And we're able to get to award a winner at the end of the conference. So we have that, and we also have the Energy Professionals Award, where we're able to recognize and award the efforts of East Africa's finest in the energy space, everyone who's contributing towards energy efficiency in Africa and the sub-Saharan Africa region. So this event is going to be an amazing one, because we're going to, for the first time, we're moving it from Kenya to Uganda. Thank you so much for being here today. I would like to acknowledge our partners, the partners during this World Energy Day conference. We have them on call today. We have Area Finergy, who are industry leaders in supplying clean energy technologies and storage and power quality systems. And they also offer financing solutions to organizations in Africa and mostly in the East African region. And we have them on call today. We also have Camco Clean Energy UK. Camco is a fund manager, and they specialize in clean energy and climate finance. And they have done a lot of financing in Africa, in China, in the Southeast Asia, in USA, and in the Caribbean. And we're so happy to have them here in this call today. We also have Yonrea, UNREA is the Uganda National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Alliance. And it's an umbrella organization that constitutes 5 other member organizations, and they champion renewable energy and energy efficiency in Uganda. So we are so glad to have them here today. And we have an amazing list of speakers today also joining us. Our moderator is Lynette Njeri. She's part of the World Energy Day Secretariat. And I hope she's on the call right now. Lynette, you can say hi.
Hi, Linda. How are you? Great
Fine,
to see all of you today.
Yes, so we'll just move on to the next session, which is introduction of our speakers and engaging of our panelists. So I will just hand over to Lynette Njeri, our moderator for the day, and I'll be able to speak to you a bit shortly after her session. Welcome, Lynette.
All right, thank you so much, Linda. It's really a great pleasure to be here to see all of you. I've been really looking forward to this day. I'm really passionate about us talking about financing in the energy sector, and one of the ways to do this is through ESCOs. And today the conversation is just about ESCOs, and I really am looking forward to it. So did you know that the first ESCO was established in the 1970s? This was when there was an energy crisis, and one of the ESCOs that was established then was called Time Energy, and it introduced a device that would help to automate the switching on and off of energy and other equipment to regulate energy use. And people were in doubt about whether there would be any savings or not. And so what the company did is they would install the device and they would ask for a percentage of savings. And voila, that's how the first ESCO began. And so we will really be looking at how do we establish ESCOs, how do we get financing, how do we have partnerships to be able to grow the energy solutions that we have. And we have an excellent panel of speakers today, and they'll be speaking to us about the different things that we've talked about, from partnerships to financing to the technology, and we'll get a real life ESCO that's already going on to hear about that case and how it's working out, and you can ask any questions that you have. And so we kick off with our first speaker. Our first speaker is, drum rolls, Cynthia Alexander. Cynthia Alexander is the Principal Officer of Renewable Energy and Renewable Energy Management Unit in Seychelles Energy Commission. She's been working to support the regulation of the electricity sector and to implement energy policies and strategies, including the promotion of energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency in Seychelles. She's a guru of energy efficiency in Seychelles. She's really passionate about renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable development. Today, Cynthia will be tackling the topic, partnership development and experience in the energy sector. Say hi to us, Cynthia. You're online.
Hi, Lynette. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And that was so nice to listen to saying energy guru. I hope to become one day. We are learning every day. Energy is something that is innovative, and we do learn something every day. Good morning again. Thank you for the introduction. It was very nice. To start with, I would say one of the best ways to address an issue when it comes with finance, because finance is something that is needed to start any business or to change from one existing technology to the other existing technology also. So to address any issue with financing energy efficiency projects or renewable energy projects, it is important to create these intermediaries, like they are not they are not like I buy this product, I sell this product, I make a profit, I give you the service. This is not how energy works. That is the most important thing that we have to understand. So that's where we talk about ESCOs, energy service companies. This will be, as you said, it has been there since 90s, but it is only now that we have been talking a lot about it. And based on the strategies that ESCOs have been using, I see it as a most powerful instrument which can trigger the realization of energy efficiency as we want to see it in the market. For example, we can say going renewable is so simple. It's like buying a product, installing and producing electricity to it. But energy efficiency measures or low-lying fruits that we can pluck with our hands, which we are missing it and waiting for the supermarkets to sell the big fruits packed with plastics and with all the money needed for paying the transport and the work that has been engaged with them. So this is what we are missing. So we need ESCOs to make this realization of energy efficiency instruments very, very powerful. And by what do they do? What do they do like that? We can say they can be energy performance contract like EPCs with a client, like whoever wants to implement energy efficiency measures in their buildings or their organizations or their industries where they don't have a basic knowledge of it. So here comes the ESCO who are experts in doing what they do. So they help to reduce energy consumption and thereby the cost that is associated with payment of energy. So this has to be done in a viable manner. So this is where we see the ESCOs engage us in a performance-based contract. They can help us with the energy performance, improving our energy performance, and whatever we save from by being energy consuming, by saving our energy, this can be used to give a profit to them so that they can make money. And definitely after a certain period of time, we will be able to handle it ourselves, and eventually not just our pockets will be saved, but also the environment and the social aspect of what we are doing for ourselves is all addressed by being energy efficient. So I think the expertise comes from ESCOs, and they can do small things like telling you to just retrofit your normal lights into LEDs, starting from that and until it can go all the way to implementation of energy efficiency projects or identify energy saving opportunities, or even go on further higher standards to conduct an energy audit in the existing facilities, or help you to support how to be energy efficient when you are in the process of coming into a new building or providing a new opportunity for a new business. So this is how we see the role of ESCOs, which is not yet to that standard right now. What we need to do to make these ESCOs more viable for us, to make them user friendly for us to make use of them the most is what I see is a wide ranging regional assessment would be helpful. So we know if it is a tropical country, these kind of things would be helpful. They can do analysis of existing policies, regulatory frameworks, identify the existing barriers, or even come up with the case studies, like, they can explain from their experience of what has been done in some other places, which can be implemented or tailor-made to suit our needs. So these are the things that we have to work with them to see how we can overcome these barriers. And also we can take the recommendations to develop and implement not just projects or energy efficiency measures, but also policy reforms, because it is very important when we are talking about energy efficiency, we have to have a market that caters for it. Like from where I'm coming from, this is Seychelles. It is an island geographically isolated from most of the sub-Saharan Africa. So it is very important for us to know, we can talk about so many new innovative technologies that are there, but what is the point if the market is not ready to take the new products or is not being innovative in having the products? So it is very important, like as we work towards implementing new measures or competing with new innovative technologies, we have to support the market growth to have these innovative technologies available for the consumers. And this is where I see ESCOs will play a very important role, where they will be able to connect the consumers and the regulators and the energy efficiency measures together. This doesn't have to be stopped for only energy efficiency. This can further be extended also to renewable energy projects, because when a consumer comes out of blue that he is concerned about the environment, he or she is concerned about the payment that is being made for energy consumption, it will be useful to have an ESCO to be able to help them identify the issues, support them in what kind of improvements they need to do. Also, I would say that the main advantages of having an energy service companies can help to scale up the energy efficiency of a country by offering specialized technical and financial services. Also, starting from planning, project design, implementation, and after further maintenance and operations also. In the case of Seychelles, I would say we have to start with like simple models, simple business models, where we can say introducing the ESCOs developing countries like Seychelles, where we have to have our policy and strategies aligned with. So, for example, Seychelles is working on introducing ESCO regulations in the near future. We are currently working on the existing energy policy, and we have the Energy Act, which allows us to have ESCOs, but we are working on introducing these small regulations so that it is a win-win situation for the service providers, as the regulators, and the consumers as a whole. Since energy is fast changing, and also we have to address climate change issues, we have to have our other commitments in order to address energy aspects, to work on our international agreements. It is important that we have this approach to frequently amend our legislation, which is a hard thing to do. So we have to be very careful about what we are putting on the regulation, or we have options to keep it open so that we will be able to add something in the future. Also, I would say right now ESCOs are not very much popular because of lack of awareness and capacities, as well as the lack of regulations properly placed in countries. So I think all these have to go hand in hand to make them viable, to make them available for the consumers. The last but not the least thing that I wanted to emphasize is also the bankability of a project by the presence of ESCOs. These are the things that we have to still further discuss, especially in the sub-Saharan region, and see how regionally we can help each other, rather than waiting for a big support from a bigger organization. We will be able to do it ourselves. We say, okay, I have done like this in Seychelles, this worked. So how about all small island developing states can try doing this and implementing this approach? Or we can say, okay, Kenya has done like this, or Uganda has done like this. Why not take it to Seychelles and see what is missing and what has to be added to make it viable for a country like Seychelles? So this is how I think we have to approach this ESCOs in sub-Saharan region, which will be helpful for all of us at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. A lot of nuggets to pick up from your short presentation there, and some of the things I've picked up are that we need to look at what projects the market is ready for, not to just go out and just put projects and we've not surveyed the market. And the other thing that I really love that you talked about is simplicity of the business model. Have we looked at how simple it is and be able to implement the most simple one? And finally, the one that touches my heart is that how are we able to support our own? Can Africa support its own projects? Yeah, let us not wait for other, people to come and support us. Can we support our own? Can we benchmark against ourselves and support our own? And I really loved all of those pointers that you you've given us right there in your conversation. I just had one final question for you. I wanted you to please clarify on what is the potential for renewable energy in sub-Saharan Africa? What would you say there's potential? Are there some projects that can be supported by ESCOs in renewable energy?
You mean the sub-Saharan region, right?
Yes, sub-Saharan.
Definitely, yes. Like that is the advantage of being a developing country, I would say. Because, if you take developed countries, they already have an existing infrastructure which they have to completely transform themselves. But for the advantage of being a sub-Saharan country is that we are on the way towards towards the developed status. So it is so easy for us to address our needs with the supply of renewable energy, which can not just help us to reach our renewable energy goals, but also help us to have access of energy to everyone. Because before with the old infrastructure, we would have always talked about what kind of resources we have. Do we have oil? Do we have water? Do we have hydropower? We have to work on this. But now it's centralized, decentralized, microgrids, mini grids. We have so many options to go for solar, where we can improve the access to electricity of sub-Saharan region. So I would say it is a very big potential is there, and this potential can be explored more locally. We have in the last 5 to 10 years, I have seen a very good increase of expertise from the region. Like I have been participating in the Association of Energy Engineers, energy auditing programs. I am in their board, and I can see that lots and lots of graduates and new recruits are very much interested to develop their skill and get themselves accommodated to be present to address the issues that we are experiencing now. So I see there is a very big potential to move forward and lead as an example to other countries also.
All right. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that. I think for sure, I also feel that there's a lot of potential in renewable energy in all sectors of the energy in Africa. And this is a place to be right here in Africa.
It is.
Yes. So I'll ask people to post their questions on the chat, and we're going to address them once we are done with all the speakers. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Please stay on so that if any questions are addressed to you, we can point them out to you.
Sure, Lynette, thank you.
All right. We're going to move to our second speaker. Our second speaker, if you've been here since we started our webinars, our World Energy Day webinars, then you must have seen this face over and over again. And that is Jenny Fletcher. Jenny Fletcher has been with us for the long haul, and she's here again to speak to us. Jenny is a co-founder and CEO of Aria Finergy Holdings. She's a qualified chartered accountant and has a master's in science from the London School of Economics. Jenny has 25 years of experience in international development management, investments, infrastructure, finance, and board level experience on companies. She is on many, many boards. I would not want to start to mention that list because it's a long one, but she's really passionate about financing, and especially financing in the energy sector. Jenny today will be speaking about technologies and capacity development in the energy sector, and she is going to address us. Jenny, go right ahead.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm thrilled to be back here on a World Energy Day webinar. Such fantastic information is given and shared through these webinars. So I'm really honored to be asked to join you again. And of course, and Aria this year is the sponsor, because we really believe this World Energy Day does make a difference to so many people with the information that's shared. So thank you for inviting me to join you. So quickly, ARIA is an ESCO. We're a construction company and we are a financing company. And we provide flexible financing for solar projects across Kenya and East Africa. So I really enjoyed the previous talk about ESCOs. I think it's something that we need to grow. We need to build the capacity in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania, and help each other. And so this is a great way to sort of spread the word and share ideas on how you can actually become an ESCO. And of course, you know, financing was a key part of that. So we also, as an ESCO, of course, we raise money. So we have different financing partners and different ways of raising financing. So now diving into my specific section is what technologies should local firms currently invest in? So I'm going to focus on renewable energies, and there are a lot of them. And, you know, from this list, I would really like to hear from everyone which ones they think are the most important. So obviously we have solar PV, which is what we do, as you can see. These are some of our projects. We have solar lamps, which are critical for rural areas. We have solar thermal, which is heating. It probably doesn't get as much attention as it should, but at least 75% of the power used by all of industry is actually for heating. It's not electricity. So we spend all this time looking at electricity, but there's a massive, massive market out there for heating, for thermal. So not just solar thermal, but briquettes from human waste, pineapple waste, sugarcane waste. And there's quite a few companies out there that are actually already focused on solar thermal, but the market is enormous. So I think a lot of us sort of look at the ESCO model and we look at solar PV because that's sort of in our face. But this side of heating is also really, really important, and we need to focus on that. I think that's a really good area where local firms can look for a niche market that they can supply. There's solar thermal, but solar thermal is, again, big solar systems, large fields in order to make an impact. We have wind, which is it's a great solution, but a little bit more complex. The wind is not as regular as the sun in most places. And unless you're doing large scale, providing the support and the maintenance and also the upfront cost, some people find that quite hard to manage. We have biomass. So biomass can be for electricity, but it can also be for heating through briquettes. So looking into biomass and different biomass technologies, biogas and bagasse is used, methane for electricity. Again, it can also be used for heating. And there's quite a few entrepreneurial companies, certainly in Kenya, and I'm sure in Uganda and Tanzania, that, well, across Africa, I shouldn't just, you know, I'm a bit of an East Africa file, so, but, you know, just when I say Kenya, I mean Africa as well, you know. And then other technologies that are sort of critical or assist some of these technologies, batteries. Batteries where you've got poor power or power cuts or not enough power tied with power stabilization. And then controllers. So when you have electrical generation, often you have to combine different kinds of technologies. So you could be combining solar with the national grid, with batteries, with generators, maybe with wind. And you need a controller to manage all of that. And so, I mean, that's something that we've really looked into. So, you know, ARIA is designing a controller, or has designed it. It's now live out in the field to control all of these different technologies to make sure that you get maximum usage from your technologies. So with a good controller, you can manage your batteries and your solar. You can do some energy arbitrage to eke out as much of the solar power as you can, because in many countries such as Kenya, you can't export to the grid. There are net metering policies to some degree, but they're quite difficult to do and not easy for the small companies. So you can only use the power that you actually need in your facility. You can't put extra power onto the grid. So that's where batteries can come in and controllers can be used to maximize the sunshine. We all hate wasting energy. So that's the sort of technologies that I think that would be useful for energy firms to invest in. Please, I have one eye on the chat. So if anyone has other technologies that I've missed that they feel would like make a difference, that local firms should invest in, please just pop it in the chat, and you know, I'm happy to just say it as we go and add it to the conversation. So that's sort of around technologies, and if we don't embrace these new technologies, we will fall behind. You know, I think that Africa has such an innovative population. Some of the innovation is, some of it is bred from necessity. So when you have poor grids, then you have to innovate to get power. And I think in a way that gives us a big advantage, and it gives us an innovation step, because we have to really look at how do you solve for either lack of power or irregular power. And that opens a whole door for innovation that is not necessarily available in some Western countries where, you know, the national grid, if it is very stable. Often they have multiple power sources, there are often multiple utilities, and the grid is stable. So there's not this need for innovation, which we have here. And we have such fabulous agricultural opportunities in so many countries. Again, you know, I'm more familiar with sort of Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, or Southern Sudan, all have amazing bread baskets, if you like. And so where you have that, then you do have waste. And that waste, agricultural waste, and we really need to look at using that waste to create power, whether it's heat or electricity. So the second question I had been asked to look at or discuss was COVID-19 and how it has impacted funding and implementation of projects. So I think all of us experienced, you know, last year, sort of March through July, where everything sort of really died down. Then it came back with a vengeance, it seemed. Everyone sort of sprang back to life in the back half of the year, and that's continuing this year. Even, you know, elections around the corner in Kenya, I think a lot of businesses in Kenya are running quickly to do things. before things potentially slow down next year. Uganda's had elections, so now they're running to kick off again. So there is there does seem to be a buoyancy in the market. So where we're really feeling the impact of COVID is in the supply chain. Some projects that are more complex, power stabilization, where you need special magnets, 6 months delay with parts. Others, you know, we have some 2 megawatt projects, a few 400 kilowatt, so on. And the structures are sitting in China. Some of the panels, they've been ready to be shipped for at least the last 3 weeks. And we're praying they'll get on a ship before the end of the month. We've been promised. However, you know, everyone I talk to says they've had similar issues. There is just an issue with shipping at the moment. Costs earlier this year went right up through the roof. Costs from India, sometimes you were getting shipping costs being 3 times as much. So when you're going into these technologies or doing your ESCO, just, you know, that the cost of shipping, the cost of raw materials are fluctuating a lot. And a lot of this is companies who closed down last year are now pushing forward this year with whatever projects, infrastructure projects. So I think there seems to be a very big demand, and so delays on shipping and procurement. Interested to hear if anyone wants to put in the chat any other delays that they're feeling today from COVID, or positives. You know, I see a buoyancy in the market because it was low last year. I think there's a catch up this year. Funding, what's the impact on funding? So March 2020, we had an equity partner and equity debt partner who was ready to invest. They pulled out. And however, we are seeing everyone come back in, and potentially come back in a little bit more aggressively than prior to COVID. So, you know, for me, the jury is really out on how COVID itself has actually impacted the availability of financing. Because I think that a lot of people had time to go back to the drawing board. They looked at what they had done previously and said, should we keep doing how we've always done it? People looked at risks again. And I think in a way that pause in the economy gave people time to reevaluate their models, reevaluate risks. And some have come out more aggressively than they actually did pre-COVID. Some have stepped back, but some have definitely stepped forward. And there does seem to be the interest back in the market from a number of different funding sources. So I think, you know, with an uptick in sales as well, the funding interest is increasing. And then the next question was, what's the importance of technology and knowledge transfer as a means for building local capacity for small scale enterprises and small ticket size projects and access to energy resources? So as the market is bouncing again, you know, knowledge transfer is so important. And often it comes through the larger companies, but also the smaller companies. And we've seen within the Kenyan market a real rise of companies coming into the energy space. There's more and more technicians who understand the electrical side better. As the market is maturing, I can see the knowledge transfer. We put out recruitment ads a few months ago and had masses of applications. Many were very well qualified. Now, we did exactly the same thing about 2 years ago, and we still got masses of applications, but very few were qualified. So in the last 2 years, there's been an enormous amount of knowledge transfer, and the local knowledge on how to install systems, manage systems, etc., has increased enormously, and that's in the solar sector. I obviously I am not so much into the biomass, and solar thermal hasn't quite taken off, but certainly the heat through briquettes, there's also been a big upsurge in knowledge and understanding of how that works. And it's so important that knowledge transfer continues so that we can grow ourselves. So we don't need to be looking outside for our technical resources. And it's getting there. It's very exciting. I mean, we were absolutely thrilled to hear that, I mean, to receive so many applications and of qualified people. I mean, you always get lots of applications, but getting applications from a broad range of very qualified people, and it was a number of different levels as well. So that was really exciting to see and give me real confidence about Kenya or East Africa, which is what I'm familiar with. Gives me an enormous amount of confidence of the ability of companies here to grow and install systems and manage them. And then I suppose, you know, this sort of segues into, well, what skills are needed to implement clean and sustainable projects? And I think for me, it's almost sustainable is almost more important than, yes, clean, but how do we make that sustainable? So if you want to be sustainable, of course, you need the technical skill sets. And those technical skill sets in this country are growing. I mean, Innovators runs a lot of courses and a lot of trainings. There's so many institutions now in Kenya that provide you with trainings, the T1, T2, T3 licenses, solar trainings. So it's not just that the work is there, but also there's more opportunity for training. So you need to have the technical knowledge, and a lot of people are getting that on the job now. But the technical knowledge is not enough. You need to have financial knowledge. You need to have the business management skills, because you need to have your supply chain. You need to do your procurement. And so in order to build a company, you must have your human resources, your administration, and your finances all lined up as well. And make sure you have good legal advice. And of course, your procurement, your supply chain. So technical, of course, very important. But technical by itself, if you want to grow, which we do, and be sustainable, you must then have your financial, your procurement, good legal advice, and business management skills. AMI has great courses on how to build a small business, the Africa Management Institute. So there's resources out there for us to get this knowledge and build sustainable businesses. And a lot of sustainable businesses are being built. You know, we see it in the market. We see the new companies. We see the new competition, which is fantastic. So thank you. That's all from me. You've probably had enough of listening to my, I hope, some words of wisdom, at least. And happy to answer questions. Or
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. So many nuggets of wisdom to pick up from your conversation there. And I would say I was today years old when I learned that there are briquettes made out of human waste. I did not know about that. So thank you for making me learn about that. I wonder how they're made. But I also love that you have talked about COVID, the COVID period being an opportunity for us to reflect, and that there are companies that have come back stronger with more resolve to, you know, have an impact in the energy sector. And so I'm really glad to know that and to hear about that. Also, you have talked about the skills that we need in the energy space. I'm sure there are a lot of young people joining us. As you all know, we have a program called YIP, Young Energy Professionals, and they've been going through our program. And of course, they have seen what kind of skills they need to be able to upscale and to be relevant in the energy space. And so thank you for sharing that. I'm also glad to hear that there has been a lot of upskilling in the industry, and a lot of people have gained the technical skills to even apply for jobs and be qualified. So that makes me very happy. So thank you, Jenny, for all those nuggets of wisdom. I am going to ask anyone who has questions for Jenny to put them on the chat, and we are going to address them. As we continue with the conversation on ESCOs, as you may know, financing in the energy sector can be a bit of a riddle. And because of that, I would like to entice you and have you engage in some riddles. I have a riddle for you, and I'd like you to put it on the chat, the answer. If you think you know the answer, put it on the chat. What can you catch, but you cannot throw? What can you catch, but you cannot throw? Please put it on the chat. Ooh, okay, I see some exciting answers. Some funny answers as well. More answers, more answers, more answers. We have 65 people on this webinar, so I expect a lot more answers. Yeah, they're coming in hot. Okay, I'll give it a few more seconds. What can you catch, but you cannot throw? All right, answers are coming in. Okay, I'll take those ones. So the answer, the correct answer is a cold. Correct answer is a cold. It's not catching feelings. You know, Kenyans love to say, you have caught feelings, but it's not catching feelings. I can see someone saying it's catching energy. I don't know how you catch energy or water catchments. Can you catch? Oh yeah, you can catch water. Very, very intelligent people on this call. All right, I'll keep throwing some riddles to you throughout this session, but first we will launch our first poll. As quickly as you've answered the riddle, please give us a response on the poll. And our technical director is Ruth Carroll. Kindly put the poll up. And on the poll is, do you have plans and have you implemented energy efficiency measures? Do you have plans and have you implemented energy efficiency measures? Just give us your response there. And we will be sending this. We'll show you the results and then we'll put it also in our report. As you know, every time we have a webinar, we send out a report just to show you the happenings of the webinar, what the speaker said, and then we give you the responses to the polls as well. Okay. give you a few more seconds there to answer. Ruth, do you have enough answers? All right, I can see a nod from Ruth. Thank you everyone for participating on the poll today. And there are the results. It seems 38% have had a plan and have developed and implemented some energy efficiency measures. 32% have a plan but have not implemented. Some have a plan and plan has been developed but nothing has been implemented, 27%, and only 3% have said they've taken no steps towards achieving energy efficiency. And so this is really great because at least most of us have had a plan or are implementing something towards energy efficiency. Thank you for filling that poll. We're going to move next to our third speaker. This is a young man who is just inspiring the world. Sidney Wakaba. Sidney is an investment associate at Camco Clean Energy in the UK. He began in 2018 as an intern, but has transitioned into a full investment associate. He supports projects that are ongoing in sub-Saharan Africa and has been drafting concepts and credit papers, and as well as financial modeling. Prior, he was pursuing his master's degree in climate change and management and finance at Imperial College of Business in London. And he also has a degree in industrial chemistry from the University of Nairobi. He is trailblazing out there for us, and we are really proud of him as Kenyans. So today he's gonna speak to us about the financial mechanisms and opportunities that are there for energy efficiency. Sidney, it's really great to have you here. You can go ahead and address us.
Thank you, Lynette, and I feel humbled to be following Jenny and Cynthia, who have years and decades of experience in the region and in the space. So, as Lynette has mentioned, I work with Camco Clean Energy. I am that's a London-based fund manager, which is basically an investor into small-scale renewables across sub-Saharan Africa. So we have two funds. One is the REP fund, which is 150 million pounds for investments in small-scale renewables, known as the Renewable Energy Performance Platform. And we are currently, and we also have a second fund known as the Spark Fund, which is $50 million for investments into energy efficiency and captive power. So I'm based in the London office, and I spearhead our energy efficiency initiatives across the market. So maybe to start, I think it's very important for me, and it was really good to hear from Jenny and Cynthia. So the two things, maybe one thing that I picked up from Jenny was the fact that necessity breeds innovation. I think it's very important that Africa charts its own way, or rather its own path forward. I think there will be a need to leapfrog what, say, other Western countries have gone through. That is because we've done that before in other sectors of, or other verticals of the energy sector. They most likely will be how we advance our energy efficiency sector. And maybe another thing from Cynthia was, and it's something I come across a lot every day in my day-to-day works of energy efficiency, which is making simple business models and really what works in the market. Those are two really important things that I witness in my day-to-day works. So I'll just quickly start, and I think I was asked to tackle the question on the question of inadequate finance in the market for energy efficiency projects. And please allow me to frame that question differently. And I think that the question should be is, why is funding that is in the market not accessible? Because the truth is there are a lot of financial institutions, there are a lot of investors who have the mandate to support energy efficiency projects, but really have not been able to deploy that capital. And so you have on one end investors who are willing to put in money, but simply not having access to projects or other pathways to invest in these projects. So the question really is, why are existing funding pots inaccessible to energy efficiency project developers? And two things come into mind, at least from practice that I've seen. And the major one that I come across every day when I'm reviewing proposals is the lack of bankable projects. And as an investor, my decision making is guided by one thing, which is risk. I have a certain risk appetite, and I need to make sure that whatever project I support falls below that threshold, or rather fits within my threshold or appetite of risk. And when I say the lack of bankable projects, a few small items must be put on the table, and maybe a few questions to ask if you're asking yourself what makes a project bankable. Is number one, does it make economic sense? Are the returns in line with what investors would get? And so that you come to your typical metrics such as your IRR and your payback periods, which I won't get into, but it just needs to make economic sense. If I'm to put money in this project, why wouldn't I put it in another project if another project has lower risks and would probably give me the same level of return? And on that question of bankability, another thing to consider is, does a project meet its obligations to its funders, to its investors, to its loan providers? There needs to be a clear path to returns, particularly for lenders who are very averse to energy efficiency projects in this market. And that is because most of the projects that come across the table are simply not able to meet their return expectations. And another thing when talking about bankable projects is basically the level of risks that a project is inherent in a project. So a lot of things can be considered when you talk about risk, but some of the ones that come right off the top of my mind are technology. Energy efficiency is a very old practice. For example, if you talk about lighting and LEDs, everyone understands those. They're very clear. It's very easy for those projects to bear fruit. It really isn't. The technology is proven, but there's a lot of new technologies that are coming up right now, which traditional investors are quite scared of, or rather averse to supporting. And that's because they lack a track record of success. So when it comes to bankability, investors would always want something that has less risk, something that's been proven, and something that has a clear route to success. And the other thing that comes about when we would talk about when talking about an acceptable level of risk is the regulatory framework in the country. Does a regulator have in place good policies in place, good measures in place to ensure that investors, end users, ESCOs are protected? Those are really important things for investors. And then the second thing to talk about after talking about bankable projects is the high level of perceived risks. So when you talk about bankable projects, mostly it's the ESCOs who carry that burden of proving that a project is bankable. If Innovators brings forward a project, it's their burden to tell me that this is actually a decent project and it makes sense. On the other hand, you have investors or lenders where the second thing falls on them, that is a high level of perceived risk. And it really isn't, I guess it's more of what the market or where the market is. So a lot of investors or lenders are really, the risk they place on energy efficiency projects, at least when I speak to most of them, is quite high. So they lack an awareness of what is viable. They lack an awareness of, or rather an appreciation of what is a decent project. So that is really the two things that I would say are lacking in the market, who have led to funding pots being inaccessible to energy efficiency project developers. The second thing that is, the second question I was asked to tackle today was, what criteria do financiers and investors use to identify viable projects? And this, again, I was asked to rely on my experience with reviewing projects and basically making investment recommendations. And it's just almost the same thing that comes on board, which I spoke about, which is risk and bankability. But in practical terms, a few things, the major thing that I actually see day to day, and which is probably something I'd ask any energy efficiency developer to take home, is predictability of cash flows, the certainty of cash flows. As an investor, that is the one thing I look at when projects are brought to me. What certainty or what assurance do I have that this project will generate sufficient cash flows? And that is tied to maybe the funding model you use. Are you using a leasing model, or are you using a certain type of savings model? Obviously, different markets have different levels of appetite. In sub-Saharan Africa, what we're seeing is that the savings model is still taking time to grow and develop. And I think it's something that Cynthia alluded to, which is simple business models to begin with, and then we could go into more complex business models. But for now, the most important thing as an investor is that certainty of cash flows. That's what I look at on a day-to-day basis. I think I mentioned the question of technology risk when it comes to what developers need to show investors. But there are other things which is really important and key for energy efficiency project developers, which is a track record, particularly for lenders or equity providers in this space. They do like to see a decent track record from developers. It is very difficult and almost unheard of that an investor would put in money into a project or into an entity if that developer or that entity does not have a track record. So it's very important that before you approach a lender or an investor, that you have some track record that shows you know what you're doing, you have the experience, you have the networks, and you basically have the background to execute these projects that you're asking funding for. Obviously, the other things that I would look at when it comes to, or rather that investors would look at, are, for example, what is the E&S situation? That's your environment and social. A lot of investors have their investors as well. A lot of the investors to investors place obligations on them to make sure that the E&S situation or the E&S standards meet really high standards, typically IFC standards. So it's very important that I know if there's waste from this project, it will be handled safely, that nobody's been displaced by these kinds of projects. Other things to look at when you're bringing projects to us, obviously, is the permitting. Do you have the permits in place? Are the technical studies in place? And are there sufficient, say, technical studies such as load studies, energy efficiency audits? And finally, what is the EPC or equipment situation? Are there warranties? Are you using a decent equipment provider? Because all these go to one thing. They guarantee me as a lender or as an investor that there's a high likelihood of me recouping my money. And I think the final thing I was asked to speak about was basically what opportunities are there for energy efficiency programs in the market. I think, as I started with at the beginning, a lot of investors have a mandate for energy efficiency, but developers have been unable to access this funding pot. And the most important thing, or rather one of the most important things that I tell developers to look into is, prior to approaching lenders or investors, have all your ducks in a row, or at least speak to them about their expectations, because it takes time to build relationships with investors. I'm sure Jenny would confirm from her many years in the market, it really takes time to build these relationships before an investor is actually willing to back you. And the simplest things can take them off. So there's a lot of programs from Sunref. We also, as Camco, finance energy efficiency projects. And some of the things we look to in the market are making sure that these developers have lined their ducks. So they have some track record, the technical studies are in place. So in terms of programs, I would recommend, and because I understand that a lot of developers do not have sufficient capital in the beginning, look into TA programs that are currently in the market. look to deploy your equity to again get that track record in place. It's easier to speak with investors once you have that track record in place. I think the truth is there is funding, maybe to close off, there is funding, but it's how to access that funding as EE developers that we are seeing lacking in the market. And so as CAMCO, we've always been trying to assist, basically to make sure that developers, particularly local developers or developers who've been in the market long enough, are able to access the funding that we give. But it takes time, and it really needs, developers need to have their ducks in a row. So I think I'll stop there to keep it brief. And I'm happy to keep this conversation going. And it's really good to meet each and every single one of you. Thank you, Lynette.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sidney. Guys, I told you this is a young man to look out to. And you can see the kind of wisdom he's brought to the table as well. And I think a lot of the things that ESCOs are looking at for in projects and what investors are looking for in projects, I think you've spoken about the hugest chunks that we need to look out for, from the projects being bankable to what their perceived risk is, if they're making any economic sense for the investors, what the environment is looking like. And I think those are really key things to look out for. And I can see already a lot of questions have been put on the chat for you, Sidney. And so we're going to give you a moment. Please stay with us. And we'll give you a moment at the end once all the speakers have spoken, just to respond to the questions from the audience, just so that we are able to save on time. So thank you so much, Sidney, for that. All right. What can be larger than you without weighing anything? Please put your responses on the chat. What can be larger than you without weighing anything? Any responses on my riddle? I think people are Googling. I think they're taking their time. Oh, all right. A lot of answers coming in. Very good answers. Then some funny answers as well. Yeah. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds to answer. Remember, it's but weighing the last part without weighing anything. So it doesn't weigh. You can't weigh it. Okay, so I can see some responses here. And yes, if you answered shadow, you were right. Your shadow can be larger than you, but it doesn't weigh anything. But your tummy, I'm sure your tummy weighs something. And how is it larger than you, Carol? It's really funny. All right, thank you. Thank you for your responses. Okay, so we're going to move to our fourth and final speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are seated or lying, if you are seated back, you need to sit up and upright for this conversation, because it all culminates to this. This is a real life ESCO that's already in place and it's working, and we'll hear about it from Alex Rathmell. Alex is the Managing Director for Consultancy and at EnergyPro Group in the UK. It's an impact-led consultancy and advisory firm focusing on financing clean energy. He has many years of experience helping organizations of all shapes and sizes to improve their energy efficiency and to decarbonize. He is now leading a $1 of the most innovative things in the ESCO space, which is the ESCO in a box. It's a platform for organizations who help businesses to reduce their energy and adapt to renewable energy. So the idea was piloted in Oxfordshire, UK, through government funding and in partnership with e-innovators here in Kenya. And Alex and his colleagues are rolling this ESCO in a box to new clients in the UK and around the world. And Alex today is going to present to us what ESCO in a box is, how it works, what are the challenges they've faced so far, and you can ask all the questions that you may have to Alex. Alex, you can come on. We are looking forward to listen to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. You get to a point in your career or your life where you're no longer introduced as a promising young man like Sidney was, but look, thank you very much for that kind introduction, and it's really lovely to be with you all, and thank you very much for the invitation. So like Sidney, I'm speaking to you from London, or just outside London, so a nice sort of breakfast meeting for us this morning. You know, it's been great to listen to the previous speakers and get their insights on the ESCO position in that part of the world. As Lynette mentioned in her introduction, it is an area that we've been becoming a little bit more familiar with by working with innovators, and that's been a real pleasure over the last, I suppose, since the start of this year. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what we've been doing there. But I think firstly, my job is to introduce the ESCO in a box model and the concept that we've developed and that we're now looking to roll out. And perhaps just comment a little bit on how we hope it will overcome some of the challenges associated not just with ESCOs but with energy efficiency generally. The important caveat, though, with all of this is that there are no silver bullets in this. That there is no magic that will mobilize this industry. It's a combination of access to finance and capacity building. And crucially, it's about client organizations being motivated and driven to reduce their demand for energy and then to decarbonize any energy that they do need. And that's a challenge that we've tried to really focus on with ESCO in a box. Now, just to make things a little bit more complicated, I'm going to try and share my screen. I don't think I can actually. I haven't got the option to do that at the moment. Never mind, maybe I'll just sort of talk you through it. I'll just talk you through it. That's fine. We don't necessarily need the visuals. For some reason, the little button hasn't come up. But ESCO in a box is a concept that we have developed starting in the UK. In the UK, we have ESCOs, but they're mostly working in the public sector. So they're mostly serving local authorities, healthcare, hospitals and healthcare trusts, schools, that sort of thing. There are some industrial ESCOs as well, but it's primarily a public sector thing, and indeed that's the case in the US as well, where a lot of the original ESCO concepts were originally developed and kind of exported from there. I think there's often this perception that some areas of the world have these fantastic kind of functioning ESCO markets, and actually it's a lot smaller still than it could be. But what we wanted to do with ESCO in a box was to look at the ESCO model. We as a team, we have quite a lot of experience in that sector, and to see which aspects of it could be adapted for a new context, which aspects are helpful in persuading organizations to do more energy efficiency work, so offering them an energy efficiency solution or proposition that's appealing for them and that they want to say yes to. Okay, let me try and share my screen again. I'm afraid it's still not there, the little screen sharing option. It's just appeared. Sorry everybody to make you participate in my technical challenges here. Okay, share. Aha. Does that, somebody nod if you can see the screen? Okay. Right, there we are. Very good. Right, here's a picture of ESCO in a box and how it conceptually looks. And I'll just carry on with my little speech. So we had an opportunity with some UK government funding in Oxfordshire in the UK to develop what was called a community ESCO. So a new venture that would serve smaller businesses, not necessarily the public sector and not necessarily big energy intensive industrials, but to serve all businesses within a geographical area with energy efficiency and clean energy projects. So we looked at the ESCO model as it was used and in our experience, and we adapted it for the context that we had in front of us there. And the challenge we were really facing was there are lots of energy efficiency audit schemes that businesses can take advantage of. So you can have somebody come in and assess your potential for saving energy or for adopting renewable energy. And some of those are compulsory, they're required by regulation, and some are freely available through grant schemes and incentive schemes. But most of those audits are never acted upon. So the organization then doesn't progress to actually delivering a project on the back of that. So in developing this new community ESCO, what we wanted to do was to try and overcome that by developing a form of energy efficiency that was easy to say yes to and easy to adopt. And really what that means is offering it on a very de-risked basis for the end user. So by providing access to finance, so they don't need to find any upfront funding to implement the project, but also by making it very painless to actually undertake the works and to work with contractors who are going to be delivering a very high standard and very good quality, but having that quality assured by the ESCO so that the ESCO stands behind the commitments that it's made. And measurement and verification is a really important part of it as well, so that there's savings that have been achieved, so that the client can see that those savings exceed the obligation to repay the finance over a period of time. And despite that being the kind of fundamental engine behind the ESCO model, that bit is often done very badly or not at all in lots of ESCOs that arise in real life. So we really wanted to address that. So we developed our first ESCO in Oxfordshire, which you can see in the bottom left here. That's Energy Solutions Oxfordshire. So that's been up and running for about a year and is working with clients in that region. It's been hit quite hard by COVID, so its pipeline has been a little bit slower than we would have liked, but we're all in that boat, I suppose. But it is now getting really good traction and working with a huge range of different client organizations. And we've worked with two lenders here in the UK who are able to offer just very simple leases and hire purchase finance to sit behind those projects. So not conventional ESCO finance, actually. And we're now, as I say, very pleased to be working with innovators in Kenya, where we're using the ESCO in a box model, which is the underlying system that we developed in Oxfordshire, and adapting it for the context in Kenya, which is quite different because we're looking at food and agriculture businesses, more energy intensive, larger businesses. They're corporates and they're part of a big global supply chain in many cases. So you get a kind of different focus, but the core challenges of how do you get businesses to adopt and say yes to these projects, and then how do you deliver them in a way that gives confidence in the solution and gives confidence in the returns that they're generating. Those core challenges are exactly the same. So it's been great to benefit from innovators' understanding of the market that they're working within, and just to bring, I suppose, our perspective on how those systems and processes should work. So as it says in the middle there, ESCO in a box is now productized, if you like. It's ready to use for teams or organizations that are looking at developing an ESCO or ESCO-like service in a region. And essentially it provides all the resources that are needed to take a client through the kind of I suppose, the typical client journey that you would expect. So starting with a free feasibility study and then gradually moving forward into a more refined proposition. And in ESCO language, that's often called an investment grade proposal or investment grade audit. And then at that point, the client's able to hopefully sign up to an energy services agreement, which commits the ESCO to delivering the project, working with local contractors and local suppliers. And that's a really important principle. It's an important principle within the UK, where cities and regions are trying to capture the economic benefits of the move to net zero and the move to low carbon supply chains. It's equally as important as we're looking at international opportunities. Energy efficiency and ESCOs provide a huge opportunity for upskilling, for developing capacity, for capturing economic benefits within a region or a country or a locality. And the ESCO in a box model has been designed to use local providers, but it's a really important point to hold them to account for delivering a really high standard, because that's how the ESCO manages risk. It's by holding contractors to account for delivering what they've promised. And it's the case in many parts of the world, including here in the UK, that sadly energy efficiency is sometimes let down by poor quality of implementation, particularly around building fabric measures. And that's something that we really wanted to address head on with the design of this model. So I was asked to just sort of point to some of the USPs, the unique selling points of the system. I think that system for handling performance risk is something that's quite new and innovative. So ESCO in a box doesn't propose a savings guarantee in the simple kind of ESCO sense, or a shared savings model. We've developed a concept of assured savings. So the only difference is that under the assured savings model, the ESCO doesn't have to pay a cash sum to the client in order to make up for any shortfall in the savings. Instead, it undertakes corrective works and is obligated to perform a series of corrective actions. And what that subtle but important distinction means is that we can work with smaller organizations that don't have the trading history or the balance sheet that large ESCOs would typically have, because a large ESCO is sitting there accumulating financial liability the whole time that it's working with its clients. And that's no good if we're working with a community-based or a public sector organization, or indeed many of the organizations that we want to work with. So I would say that new approach to risk handling, performance risk handling, is probably the USP. But I think actually just the idea of an ESCO platform that provides all of the workflow and the software that you need to manage it, I think it does seem to be a fairly unique proposition at this stage. So looking forward to see where else we can take it, I guess. I think specifically to the region that we're focusing on, the challenges of creating investable energy efficiency have been articulated really well. I think it's increasingly unnecessary to draw a distinction between energy efficiency and clean energy, and indeed other aspects of sustainable development and investment. What we would like to do is to further improve and develop ESCO in a box so that we can incorporate value streams from all sorts of different activities around clean energy. That's in there already, renewable energy, but
Alex, you seem to have muted.
I think I'm having some slight technical gremlins, so I do apologize for that. I don't know what that's about. I literally, my hands have been here just waving and gesticulating, so I don't know how I managed to mute myself, but there we are. What was I talking about? Anyway, we're looking forward to dealing with not just energy efficiency projects, but I think it's projects that encompass a number of different value streams, and how can a de-risked ESCO type model be applied to those? I think that's the question really for this part of the world, where there's such a huge opportunity to create local economic value through this route. Particularly the food, agriculture, horticulture, those sectors have got sometimes very tight margins, but very sort of constrained operations by being part of a kind of global just-in-time supply chain. By delivering energy efficiency and clean energy services to those businesses, an ESCO is able to provide a service that has a fundamentally different business and returns profile to the core business of the host, and in doing so can create real value for itself and for the people that work there and for the community. So that the opportunity is huge. We just need the right business models. Yeah, I think that probably answers the final question. I mean, we're finding the final question was, how can energy firms, contractors and financiers benefit from the model? I think from the financial point of view, very simply, we're trying to create more investable projects and to provide visibility of those as they come through the pipeline. And hopefully that's something that, you know, our sense is that there's a great global sort of latent appetite to invest in energy efficiency that's not matched by investable projects. And hopefully we can, you know, make a small contribution to correcting that. I think once those investable projects are available and are visible, the money will flow. I think it's out there, and energy efficiency represents such a great opportunity. But I think, you know, it's as I say, beholden on everybody to try and boost the impact of projects by looking at other value streams as well. If energy efficiency is the kind of engine that sits underneath, you know, what else can we do while we're on site, while we're doing a project, while we're creating, you know, a new sustainable solution for that end user. There we are. Hopefully that was, despite the technical problems, useful and interesting, and a pleasure to talk to you all. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Right, thanks, Alex. I think someone has mentioned on the chat that if there are no technical issues, then it's not a good meeting. And so we're happy to have a few of the technical issues.
This is the world we're in these days, isn't it? But this world does allow me to speak to you from, you know, from a very long way away, so we shouldn't complain too much.
Yes, we're happy to have this world. A lot of things you've shared that are really great. I feel your presentation would answer a lot of the questions raised by Sidney, and so in a way it was really a good follow-up to that in terms of the bankable projects and the ESCO in a box being a solution to just be able to build a good number of bankable projects that investors can look to invest into. And so I feel that it was very well timed to have you come after Sidney. I also like that the uniqueness of the ESCO in a box in terms of the assured savings, instead of having to have people pay when the savings are not as they had been anticipated. And so being able to have corrective actions is something that is very unique, and I think will be a game changer in the ESCO world. I also like that you're looking to get into other, apart from energy, you're just looking to touch on other areas, including food, which is a big thing going forward with climate change and everything that's happening. And a lot of people are looking at sustainability, and one of the industries to look at is the food and agriculture industry. And so if ESCO in a box is going to touch on this, I think that's really important. All right, so thank you, Alex, for your demonstration of what ESCO in a box is. We really appreciate that. I'm now going to go back to the chat just to get the questions from the different audience members to the panelists, so that we are able to answer those as we go along, and then maybe we can close with one riddle. So there's a question for you, Cynthia, and I can see you put your video on from Jibs Manyala, and he's saying ESCOs may not always have funds of their own to finance projects. Could you touch on how to rope in financial institutions in this noble effort to develop viable energy projects using metrics appropriate to energy efficiency projects? Maybe Cynthia, you could pick that up.
Thank you, Lynette. To be honest, in Seychelles, as I said, the regulatory part is still being developed, and the most important barrier we see is connecting a financial institution to a ESCO or even a customer who want to go for energy efficiency products. But based on what I have been seeing everywhere happening, the case studies and other countries model, I think it is very important. Even Sydney was touching it, where we say the risk is the most important thing that has to be addressed. And when it comes to energy efficiency, there is no one model fits all. You say, I put LED light, I save X US dollar. You cannot say like that. It depends on where you are going to change the LED bulb and how much savings it will make for you. So it's not a one solution fits everyone model. So it is very important to have a financial institution, and the customer relationship is very, very important. As it was discussed just by Jenny and Sydney also, the customer creditworthy and trustworthiness can be easily identified based on what they have done before. If they have taken a bank loan before, if they have done it, if they have repaid it on time and like that. But when it comes to be like an energy efficiency project, there is this lack of understanding between the technical part and the financial part between the bank and the customer. I think it is important that there should be a trustworthiness that is established on energy efficiency projects between the customer and the lending institution. That should be a technical support available for banks. The bank should be empowered with knowledge of how to rate a project proposal when it comes to energy efficiency, which can clearly define, okay, where is the cash flow? What is the role of each and every person who is participating, the ESCO, the consumer, bank as the financing institutions? You know, these are the things that has to be properly guided and addressed, which can improve the support from each other to promote such funding options. The regulators can play a very important role in this session, where we can see to safeguard both the consumers and the funding institutions by providing their support. You know, it has to be a win-win situation, as I said before. It should not be a very complex system where we try to let's say the ESCO are trying to do a very small project, and suddenly the bank are asking for a big collateral that is bigger than the project itself. It should not. There should be a connection between all these things, which is what I'm thinking. And the bank should make sure that there are unlimited construction guarantees and cooperate with the ESCOs, because this is a new model. So it is equally important that we empower the banks as the institutions as well as the ESCOs to reduce transaction costs, to support a new project which has not been done before and everything. And I also like the ESCO in the box approach, where we can say there is the guaranteed savings. So these kind of models can definitely help financial institutions understand the need of the ESCOs. That's how I see this. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Cynthia. I think that gives us a good view of where the financial institutions come in, and you know, how we can make it win-win for everybody. And also regulators, I think you mentioned regulators as well, and their impact on the industry as well. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for staying on and for answering the questions from the audience. There was Jared was asking Jenny to put a link to the resources, and I can see Jenny has done that. Thank you, Jenny, for that. There's someone here, Chumweka, someone, Goodwin. Let me say Goodwin so that I'm not mispronouncing your name. But he had some questions for Sydney. When you talk about a clear path for payback, how long does CAMCO benchmark as appropriate time for payback? Over to you, Sydney.
Thanks, thanks, Lynette, and thanks, Goodwin. Unfortunately, this is the one. This goes back to what I spoke about, which is appetite. So as Alex has mentioned, there isn't a silver bullet. So for CAMCO, for example, our payback will be very different from what the market would want. For CAMCO, we look at projects, energy efficiency projects, between 3 and 7 years for payback. And that's because we think it's viable. We've seen it done. We've looked at enough projects to know that the market can give us what we want. However, other investors or other lenders would have different paybacks and different return expectations. So there isn't a silver bullet. Your second question was, do you think renewables will give you less risk for bankers considering that they compete against already established systems that have low upfront capex? Again, goes back to appetite, but we've certainly seen, I don't know if this is Jenny, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this. We have seen energy efficiency projects with better paybacks than typical infrastructure projects, because they are quicker to execute, because it's an old technology, it's well understood. And so we think that they have better paybacks than your typical infrastructure projects. So it's just the fact that a lot of investors have not, it's a sleeping giant. A lot of investors have not been awoken to the fact that energy efficiency is viable and it's decent. The returns are quite decent. Your last question was, how will the investors be made to realize what is viable? I guess it's having programs such as this, the World Energy Day. It's having people such as Alex trying to make business models more simple to execute in sub-Saharan Africa. It's having in place the proper regulations to make sure that investors actually feel that they're protected by regulators and by policy. So it will take time, but as I've mentioned, there may be a need to leapfrog, say what other countries, more developed countries have gone through. But I certainly think it takes a lot of technical assistance, it takes a lot of training, it takes a lot of capacity building to get investors to a point where they actually realize what is happening. But above all, it will have to be bankable projects being presented to investors and them actually seeing that there is sufficient pipeline, there's sufficient deal flow, and that there is sufficient or that risks are within their threshold. Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, Goodwin.
All right. Thank you, Sidney, for staying on and answering the questions from the audience. I think you've tackled that very well, that we need to educate from the investors to the ESCOs and to the people who are coming up with the innovations, just to be able to raise the platform and be able to have bankable projects for sure. The next question goes to you, Alex. What's the criteria for one to be part of ESCO in a box? That's a question from Isaac.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the question. At the moment, we're really forming partnerships to roll this out into new areas, new regions, and potentially new sectors. So I wouldn't say there are any hard and fast criteria at this point. But I suppose one thing to say is that ESCO in a box is not a substitute for having really good technical capability and capacity. It provides the business model, and it provides the hard systems and processes and the standardized contracts, but it relies on having a really good energy assessor go and work out the opportunity to implement projects. It relies on having good experienced project managers who can pull that together into an implementable project, working with local suppliers, etc., etc. So it is a way of getting those professionals into opportunities. It's not a kind of big database of every energy efficiency measure you could ever do that will kind of create a project for you, if that makes sense. So that technical capacity is really important, and of course access to potential markets, whether that's an industry segment or whether it's a sort of geographical coverage. That's another really clear attribute. But as I say, we have tried to develop it so that we can work with organizations of all shapes and sizes, we're not looking necessarily to work with huge companies or organizations from the public sector or any particular category. So kind of welcome inquiries and discussions really from companies of all sizes, and we'll see if we can help. The only final caveat is that we're not infinitely resourced ourselves, so we have to be a little bit kind of selective in the projects that we really kind of pursue, but really happy to sort of take questions and inquiries, and we can always have a chat about it.
Great. You can hear Isaac. Alex is ready to have discussions if you have You have an idea there. I'll ask Jared Lay to just ask his question to Alex. I think you could just come on, you can turn on your video and just ask your question. Jared? All right.
I think we've lost the net briefly.
Yeah, I think we've lost Lynette. I think I'll just read out Jared's question. And he's asking, how does one manage risk in an ESCO? One generally doesn't know where the risk lies most of the time, unless one's a very seasoned expert in both the technology and the client behavior. So I think the general question is on managing risks in ESCO. I think maybe Alex, you can answer this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it is in a way it's the question about the ESCO model, because there are different kinds of risks. There are risks that you can see, and there are risks that you can't, that just end up getting priced in almost because you can't see them. And any ESCO will charge a risk premium for outsourcing, responsibility for implementing a project or for reducing energy costs. And whether that premium is visible or not depends on the ESCO and on the underlying system. So I think what I would say is that risk has to be managed and controlled at every single stage of the process. So in my slides, I showed a kind of wheel that had the process that we use in ESCO in a box, and we've tried to build in risk control into every aspect of that, particularly focusing on the sorts of risks that are particular to ESCOs. So that those would arise from technical issues or oversights if the level of savings that was promised was not achievable in practice. Risks certainly apply where you're using an external supply chain to provide technologies and to deliver works. So controlling and as I mentioned earlier, holding contractors to account for what they've said they will deliver is a really important aspect of it. But the kind of single thing to point to with the ESCO model is the measurement and verification system that's used. And it is an aspect that's often overlooked. So measurement and verification, or M&V, for anybody that's not familiar with that bit of jargon, just means the analytical process that's used to demonstrate or to calculate the level of energy savings that have been achieved by a project. And of course, those savings are ultimately what pays for the measures that have been installed. So you're looking at how do you calculate the difference between the amount of energy you would have used in a parallel universe where you didn't do a project compared to the amount of energy that you used having done that project. So what's the delta between those two things? And there are international standards and norms that relate to that. There's the IPMVP being the most frequently cited one. But it's all about how is that implemented in practice. And I think there's a huge, again, in the spirit of kind of leapfrogging and use of technology in order to kind of do this better, I think that a new generation of ESCOs has an opportunity to use technology, much lower cost metering and sensors and software analytical tools to do a much better job of M&V than the kind of previous generation of ESCOs have done. And by doing that, you give the client visibility of real performance and therefore the ability to act on or correct any problems or any underperformance, and to make sure they're getting really good value from the ESCO contract that they've signed up for, all of which improves trust in ESCOs over time and increases the likelihood that they'll be used for the next project and the one after and the one after that. So I think capacity building in M&V as a way of controlling risk is just hugely important for this sector.
Okay, thank you so much, Alex. I hope that has answered Jared's question. And also this presentation and the webinar will be shared via our WhatsApp webcast broadcast that is going to be shared on the chat. So please look out for that and join so you can be able to receive all resources that have been shared here today. We've also included all social media platforms for all our speakers in the chat. So if you want to connect with one of them, you can kindly follow the links there and you'll be able to speak more to them. I also wanted to bring your attention to some of the technical trainings that we'll be offering. I know there's a question that was asked and Jenny answered it perfectly, but EPA also is offering trainings, and we'll be able to offer certified water efficiency professional, that is CWEP. The training is in September from 14th to 16th. And we also have the certified business energy professional, BEP, which is going to be between 6th to the 10th of September. So kindly have a look out for that. The links should be shared shortly via our chat. And I think I can see Jenny's hand is up. I don't know if your question was answered or if you have something to say before I just wind up.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, just briefly to the comment on risk and to the CAMCO presentation is, you know, we're the ESCO that they're talking about, and they make us jump through many hoops to close off this risk, close off that risk. So if you want to be an ESCO and if you want financing, then you really have to have your house in order. You have to have regular board meetings. You have to have monthly accounts. You have to have a financial forecast going out 5 years, a proper operating budget. You have to have a team. You have to have a good organogram showed out. You have to be able to show the history of your team, or if it's the company, the history of the company. And all of these things, of course, they take to assess the risk. And then on the paybacks, you have to either be able to prove paybacks from your own experience, or be able to justify the paybacks from research that you've done from other things that can actually back what you're saying is going to work. Then, of course, the country risk. So raising money and being an ESCO, because being an ESCO, you have to raise money. You can't survive otherwise. It's a journey, it's a process. We've been walking it now for 6 years with REF Energy. We learn every time, every new financing we want, whether it's CAMCO or one of the others. There's a lot of due diligence that we have to walk through. The team is scrutinized, the financials are scrutinized, previous projects are scrutinized. So your technical knowledge is scrutinized. Also, all of this, when you want to be an ESCO, and then there need to be more of us, you just have to be aware all of these things have to all come together, or you won't get the money. It's not enough just to have a good project. You also have to have the team. You also have to be showing track record, either bringing a team together or from the company. So yeah, I just want to sort of say, you know, it's something that has to be developed. You know, do the trainings on the business management, you know, all of those things we've had to do to have us move along and actually become a successful ESCO. It didn't happen overnight. You know, 5 years later, they're still improving every day. So that was just a sort of a comment on risk, and to CAMCO, Sydney's comment on, you know, returns and paybacks and being able to prove them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny, for that. I think maybe we can have final takeaways from the rest of the speakers. I think I'll start with Cynthia. Cynthia Alexander, kindly give us your final takeaway of today's topic and discussion.
Thank you, Linda. Sorry. It has been a very good session where we have been able to talk about and discuss about things that we have been thinking in our minds. Like, I know there are risks associated, but that doesn't stop people from doing ESCOs. That's what we have seen today. And not just being ESCOs, we have also seen there are new different business models are being proposed. And we hope to have more business models to come that supports this kind of developments. Along with what Alex and Jenny has just mentioned about de-risking ESCOs, there is also this opportunity where country like India is doing, where they are setting up a fund by themselves to support this kind of ESCOs, where the risk is taken by the government. So this is also one approach that can be done. And also I want to mention SACRI, SADC region for renewable energy and energy efficiency has been doing a very good support. And recently with their ELA project, where it is energy efficiency for lighting and appliances, they have called for interest for any citizens from sub-Saharan Africa, like southern and eastern region of Africa, where they can apply to get support to become an ESCO. They provide capacity building, they provide technology support, and they are helping you to make a business case out of what your expertise is. So this kind of regional and country-wise bilateral cooperational support also is available. So these are the things that we can do to use de-risking and implement ESCO, energy efficiency projects using ESCO, or become an ESCO also by ourselves. So it has been a very eye-opening session, I would say, and I wish there should be more talks on energy efficiency and how to build different kinds of business models to promote energy efficiency has to happen more, which will make people to be more aware. And then, as I said, once the customer needs something, they will go and look for these ESCOs. And once there is a demand for ESCOs, it will be easy for them to become a prominent business. And once you see there is a demand for ESCOs, there will be financial institutions that says, okay, there is this business model available. Let me try to accommodate my way of financing this project. So this is how it has to work: cooperatively, capacity building, a legal framework. Everything has to go hand in hand. Thank you for this session, and thank you for listening to me also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Sidney Wakaba, I think Cindy, you can go next. Final takeaways.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. I guess for me, it's to highlight the importance, particularly of energy efficiency and renewable energy in terms of allowing the world to meet its global, say, emissions targets, or the 1.5 degree scenario. I think particularly energy efficiency is expected to play a big role in this. And so it's something that's close and personal to my heart. I think especially for African countries and for the African market, we are the most vulnerable in terms of the impacts of climate change. And so I think there really is a need for ESCOs and renewable energy companies to step forward and to be able to assist the continent to transition into a more sustainable future, not just for the benefit of the continent, but also for the world. Climate change will hit each and every single corner. So I'm really excited to see that there are initiatives such as this. And I think there's a role to play by policymakers, by financiers, by regulators, and even by, very importantly, by ESCOs, in ensuring that each and every person is playing a part to it. So I hope that these kinds of initiatives will continue, and I look forward to interacting with you guys more and more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sidney. Alex, any last takeaways?
Yeah, just really briefly, I think the thing not to lose sight of is that the energy efficiency is a hugely important area. It's probably the single biggest contributor to those net zero and decarbonisation efforts that are needed. but organizations, companies have to want it. You know, they have to want to do it. They have to see that it is something that's aligned with their strategic interests, as well as presenting a compelling investment case or a business case. So any organization that is an ESCO in any form, or working with corporate organizations, it's all about how to make that proposition appealing and strategically relevant, because there's no point in us all designing fantastic ESCO models that have no demand, or standing by to finance ESCOs that have no clients. It's all about how do we make this a strategically relevant thing to the organizations that would host these projects, and actually to the individual human beings who make the decisions within those organizations. So I think that's probably the challenge that I would leave you with.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you so much, Alex, for that. I would also want to acknowledge Esther Nyansi, who is the CEO of UNREA. UNREA is one of our partners. She joined us during the call. I also wanted to acknowledge Samia Zawaide. I hope I'm saying it rightly. This is the former president of the Association of Energy Engineers. Thank you so much for joining us for this call. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you so much, Jenny and Sydney, for taking your time to be with us and share. It's been a very insightful meeting. I'm sure there's a lot of takeaways, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of questions in your inbox soon. And I hope that everyone who's joined us will be able to join us for the last webinar, which is going to be in the coming month of September. And it's going to be on clean energy and energy efficiency inclusion, which is also regarding disability, gender, and youth. So it's going to also be a very good session, and we hope to see you, because after that, we'll be going to Kampala and we'll be having the World Energy Day conference celebrated there. So yeah, it's been a good session, and I'm glad I was part of it. And yeah, thank you all. I think we lost Lynette. I was hoping she would say bye to us, but yeah, I think you can leave at your pleasure. We'll have some music playing in the background.
Thank you, everyone.
Much.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.